got their goddamn hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
We got attorneys. We got like everyone's just kind of getting their little chunk of it. So.
No, I'm with you. So, are we recording already?
We're live.
Uh-oh.
So.
Well, hello, everybody.
So you want to give us a little bit of background, kind of who you are, what you do, so
Sure.
the audience has an idea, and then we'll kind of jump into the three things we just mentioned?
Sounds good. My name is Charlie Bellefontaine. I feel like I'm going through this 12-step program here. I am a home inspector. And I've been doing home inspecting since 1993, so that's about 32 years now. I've also been a fireman for 37 years. I've retired in 18. And we have a 14-person home inspection company here in the Chicagoland area, and we do very well. I'm also the president of the State Association for Home Inspectors. I'm also our lobbyist, and I end up doing a lot of negotiations with the IDFPR when it comes to rule changes and license changes, and I'm also an education provider for home inspectors. And yeah, I got you mentioned about people having their hands in the cookie jar. Man almighty, I need more hands to put in that cookie jar. You know, there seems like a lot going on. So, but I've been around.
Yeah, it sounds like you've done so many things, and I'm actually very excited to learn more about the state side of things and what that all entails, because I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that's been in that position. So there's a lot of things going on in like the federal, state governments right now with, I don't know, this administration, DOGE, all those things. Has that affected you guys? Has that come to this industry, or is that something completely separate?
I don't know. I think that the home inspection business is a lot like the real estate business.
Okay.
So what I mean about that is there's roughly 75,000 licensed real estate brokers in the state of Illinois. 80% of them haven't done a transaction last year.
Licensing in and of itself is a business.
It is. Yeah, the schooling you're talking about, getting somebody licensed.
Oh, I mean, $800 per year for a license, and you said 75,000?
75,000 licensed real estate. Now that's real estate brokers and real estate managing brokers combined.
Okay. But I don't know what the math is on that. Let's just round up to 100,000. I don't know. What are you looking at?
Well, 10%.
$80 million.
Yeah,
that's an insane amount of money just for the state of Illinois. Like,
right.
So,
and then we also have another 1,200 licensees in the home inspection business.
There's only 1,200 licensees?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it?
That's it. People come and go. And I would also say that 80% of our population hardly does any inspections at all. All right. So there's really only maybe a dozen multi-inspector home inspection companies around here that have built up a strong reputation. And most of them like to build relationships with home inspectors. But I am I guess the right word is realist. So I'm a little bit prejudiced against real estate agents for the most part. So I mostly, not mostly, we market direct to consumer. We don't really go after that. But you're right, though. The number and the amount of money that comes to the state of Illinois for licensing fees is tremendous.
Astronomical.
But somebody has to pay the staff that manages, and really they're there to protect us. Right?
Yeah, and once we get the archaic systems down pat, like that'll significantly reduce costs. It'll become even more profitable, right? And fees go up every year. I mean, like insurance licensing, for example, it's insane. There's 3 tests. There's a state portion for each piece. So really you're paying for 6 tests, plus you're on I think it's a 2-year, you have to renew the license. So like it's a recurring revenue model for the state. And my opinion is they're trying to, man, you don't even need a 60% or 75% to pass the exam, because they're just pushing you through to get your money. It's a very interesting thing, in my opinion. And I respect it. Do whatever you got to do. I don't know. I love it. It's just very interesting to think about it from that side.
The organization that does the testing, and I assume it's the same for you guys, you're licensed through the IDFPR?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it's IDFPR.
And
yes,
so,
it is IDFPR.
So pretty much PSI does all of their testing.
PSI or Pearson View, one of the two?
It might be Pearson View, but I know for our industry it's PSI.
Sure.
And I was under the impression that they did all the DFR or IDFPR licensing or testing for the licensing in the state. And the one thing that, we try to get our grade elevated, make it harder for people to get a license here in Illinois. And they, it just came to me, and I don't know how much truth it is. I think this wasn't supposed to be said out loud. It's something I heard. But they want a 50% fail rate, that comes out of there. And that test score goes up and down gradually in order to maintain that 50% fail rate. And the sad thing is we're right around 70%. And
70% fail rate?
No, 70% score is what is a 50% fail rate.
I see.
So if all of a sudden more people are passing, then they're going to raise the score. If not enough people are passing, then they're going to lower the score. And I get it. The state wants to keep licensees entering our business. It's important that we have new people enter our business.
Of course.
And because if we make it too hard, and I think the term that they used with me was over-regulate the profession. If they make it too difficult for people to come in there, well, now supply and demand gets limited, prices go way up. I mean, it's good for the industry, don't get me wrong, but it's not good for the end user.
Inspections in Chicago are very expensive.
It depends on who you hire, where it comes with it. I mean, it's all relative, I guess. What's expensive is the real question.
So I think mine was like $700 for a 2-flat. And
that's about what I would charge too.
In Wisconsin, I'm born in Wisconsin, Stevens Point. Lived there my whole life basically until I moved to Miami. I just moved back from Miami a couple months ago here to Chicago, getting married in September.
Yay.
Fiance's family's from Sauganash area.
Nice.
So that's kind of why I'm here. But I have property in Wisconsin, I have property in Florida, and then got an inspection here, and it was much more expensive here than both Miami, which is crazy to me, and Wisconsin. So interesting.
And I think it's who you hire. Like we do a lot of marketing on Google local ads, and we do a lot of marketing on Yelp. We get a lot of business those ways. And I know that I'm competing with people that are charging under $300, and our base rate is $550.
I couldn't find anyone like that.
I
think I was at $700 across the board.
Yeah,
from like the 4 or 5 that I called.
But it's 4 or 5. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, the small sample size, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we're talking, 80% of our population is in the Chicagoland area in Illinois. So when I also talk about that 1,200 licensees, and we were at 1,900, but
COVID.
November 30th on even numbered years, so November 30th, 2024, last November, that is our renewal year. And we usually lose roughly about a third of our licensees, and then we end up getting more after that. But, so there's a lot of people that really don't do a lot of work.
Yeah.
And finding them is hard. They don't market. They don't advertise. They don't build relationships with real estate agents. I don't know how you found the inspectors beforehand if it was through a realtor.
Yeah.
And again, 80, it's probably dropping now with the changes in the real estate law. But I would say about 70% of referrals come from the real estate agent community. Mm-hmm. All right. And we do work with some very high producing real estate agents. I'm a stubborn old boomer. All right.
It's kind of a conflict of interest, right?
I'm not going that route, because the agents that I work with, it really depends on what you want. I do a lot of coaching for new home inspectors entering the business. And the biggest thing I tell them is you got to figure out who you want to be. And they look at me like a deer in headlights. What do you mean, who I want to be? Yeah, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the person that makes the big long list? Do you want to be the person who's hunting for defects with an elephant rifle and not a sniper rifle? I think I'm making the point there. What do you want to be? You want to decide for people what's a major issue and what isn't a major issue to them. You have to decide. And
yes.
And our whole business, everything in real estate, you included, all right, in the insurance side, everything is built on building a solid relationship of trust. Mm-hmm. And and I'm going to do a little quoting from Business Networking International, or BNI. It's you got to get to know somebody. You got to like them. And then from there, you move on to the trust portion. And if once you have that trust, and the only way I can get that trust with somebody is if they have the same mindset as I am. And because I'm a stubborn old man, I don't want to change.
Sure.
All right? And
It's worked for you.
as cocky and arrogant as it sounds, I don't have to.
Yeah, of course.
And we do a couple million gross revenue a year. We keep 14 families working.
That's amazing.
It's does well, and we're still booked out over a week in advance. And people, I just got a call over the weekend that somebody was begging to get a spot tomorrow, and they were like, "We'll pay double. We'll do it." I just don't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's flattering, but I don't do that.
Sure.
It's just not the right thing to do. But I know we were talking a little bit more about the state requirements when it comes to that stuff, and it's weird, because I get these mixed emotions with licensing. We have so many states that don't license home inspectors, and then we have a lot of states like Illinois that do license them. And
what states don't have them licensed? I feel like that's ridiculous.
It's more than half, believe it
That
or
don't
not.
license?
Yeah. Like, for example, around here, Wisconsin is licensed, Indiana is registered. I don't believe they're licensed as well. Iowa is not licensed where it comes to it. Missouri is not licensed, but I believe they're registered where it comes there. Tennessee is licensed. Kentucky has a registration. But yeah, you start getting into the plains, there's no licensing in there. I mean, there's good and bad with the licensing. You're going to have some sort of minimum knowledge. You got to pass this test. You got to take a class, and you got to do something. But in all reality, when you hear other competitors talking about the licensing, they say, well, the bad ones, because licensing will not, get rid of the bad home inspectors. That it's not going to do.
Sure.
In fact, it does just the opposite. It legitimizes the bad home inspectors.
Sure.
Because it puts us all on the even playing field where it comes in there. And they say let the market weed them out because the bad ones will just get a bad reputation and then they'll leave the business. I'm like, yeah, okay, but my beef with that and the whole reason for starting this state association was I've been doing this for 32 years. I'm not leaving, but yet I get that reputation from that person that came here, did a bad job, made clients angry, made real estate brokers angry. And we are a prejudicial community or society.
There's people that are taking the hit for that bad reputation being built. Yeah. And they're losing. I don't know. I mean,
I don't. I have to build my own reputation. I don't blame anybody else. I blame me. And I don't know if that's a generational thing or what it is.
Oh, that makes sense. Accountability.
I think it's Mrs. Molesky's fault. All right.
I don't know who that is.
She was my third grade teacher. It's amazing what we can remember, right?
Yeah.
But she goes, never point the finger at somebody else because you got three of those bad boys coming right back at you.
Sure.
So I'm not afraid to say I'm sorry. I'm not afraid to admit I'm wrong. In fact, I always look at me first. What could I have done differently to avoid these situations from coming in there, right? Same thing here with licensing. What's our problem? People coming, people going, ruining our reputation, whether they think that the right thing to do is get in cahoots and con a client and get in cahoots with the real estate broker, whether they want to be uneducated and do the bare bones minimum. I don't know what it is, but it upsets people, and angry people do angry things. And my whole goal was to strengthen our but our reputation.
Sure.
And I really believe, the old joke, what are the three most important words in real estate? Location, location, location.
Yeah.
I really believe that the three most important words to a real estate professional is going to be reputation, reputation, reputation. And it's hard, really hard to build up a solid reputation, and it's easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it goes in 10 seconds. It's very hard to build it up, and you can ruin it very quickly.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast, and one little miscalculation, one little thing where you can violate that trust. And I kind of like to equate it to, well, you're in the process of getting married right now, and all of that takes time, right? you get to know somebody, you get to like somebody, you get to trust somebody, you fall in love with them, and you want to go. And that building that relationship has to last for years. But yet, all it takes is one. You cheat on somebody, you lie to somebody, you do something like that, and you break that trust. That everything that you've worked for is ruined.
Yep.
And if we can't see the value in that, I don't know what else there is. And I'm big on family, man. Stuff,
Sure.
all right. So, keeping that value in relationships is extremely important to me, and honesty does it.
Do you have kids?
Three of mine, and two of hers. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So we ended up blending, and and this is, I learned from experience.
Sure.
I didn't have somebody to coach and train me, when it comes to how to be married and stuff like that.
My parents are separated. My mom had me at 18, sister at 21. So 2 kids by 21, single mom.
Same here.
Owns a ton of real estate. Great on that side. But the family side, I've done a lot of introspection, a lot of work, a lot of time in front of the mirror.
It really is. And that affects us for the rest of our life. So when I started this home inspection business as a hobby and hunter-gatherer stuff. My wife, worked for the airlines, and then when 9/11 hit, I was talking about, how to ruin a relationship and how to ruin a family Sure. I guess I shouldn't be teaching this, but as long as we learn from our mistakes, it's okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm from that generation where, we were hunters and the women were the gatherers, right? And they were, she stayed home, raised the kids and stuff like that, and I worked hard. And, I was full-time fireman. And then
Fireman?
I didn't share that with you. I did that for about 37 years, and I retired.
24 on, 48 off?
Yeah.
It's a really good spot to be to start a business. A lot of people are firefighters now, and then they go and spin off and start a business. And
they give us too much free time.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
A lot of real estate professionals, like from my hometown.
Really?
So my mom, I would say, is like the primary market leader, but her biggest competitor is a fireman. And he's like, I'm going to still be a fireman, but he sells a ridiculous amount of real estate, owns a lot of property, has a great team. So that's interesting.
It is, yeah. And mostly it's because, of the amount of free time, and you get bored on those 2 days off. And I just want to do something that I could find passionate about, and for me it was, I like building science and I like figuring stuff out, and when you don't get the same thing over and over again, when you're dealing with, looking at people's properties and stuff like that. And then I'm also like to do educating and stuff. But, when we go back to when I started, my son was born and I felt the need to make more money. I didn't have to, but I felt the need.
You have responsibility now, right? Yeah.
Felt that way. I was just afraid. I didn't know what else to do. And this I saw in the back of a magazine, be a home inspector. So I drove out to Indiana and I took a 2-week class and I did that. And it took me 4 months to get my first gig, and I was scared like there was no tomorrow, like a little baby. And then next thing I know is, we're hiring people and we're doing about 1,500 inspections a year and everything's going crazy. Then '08 hit and it was like a light switch, and I was working 30 days a month. I never took time off. I was either at the firehouse training or trying to grow the business one way or another. And, I was away from my family, and that was a mistake, And then...
I hear that so common. Like, I hear that so frequently.
Relationship.
Yeah. So there was just a change of command. I'm in the military, Army Reserves, and we just had a change of command yesterday. And the gentleman is, I forget what his rank was. He was talking, and he starts tearing up because his daughter and his parents were there. So it seemed like the grandparents were taking care of the daughter, and he's like, "Well, this is what I've been doing." Said his daughter's name, got teary-eyed, and I was like, damn, he really spends a lot of time away from his family, and that's one thing that he really regrets.
Yeah.
So then the new commander that's coming in, he goes to his wife, the new commander's wife was sitting there, he goes, take care of the family, keep it together. It's tough, but you got to make it through. So, you're saying this. I saw it just Sunday. I see it all the time everywhere, like very, very interesting. But I'm excited to hear your piece on it.
It's not as exciting as what it sounds. In fact, it's horrible, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. you know, when at that time I was making a ton of money. You know, I was taking people, our whole family, on lavish vacations, and we were enjoying life, right? And when '08 hit, guess what? Nobody wanted to be a home inspector anymore. Nobody was hiring home inspectors anymore. A lot of real estate, you know, ended up crashing. I still had the firehouse. I still had a job. I still had insurance. I was still able to make ends meet. But now I'm home, and I lost touch with my family because years went by that I was working so hard. And then when I needed them, you know, they didn't even know who I was. And if I couldn't keep them happy, then there was no need for me. Things got heated, things got worse. Then all of a sudden a divorce happened. And now I'm remarried, and that's not going to happen again.
Learned your lesson?
Well, yeah, I mean, we set our hours. It's during the daytime. We still like to travel and see things, but we understand that this can come to a crashing halt, you know, just like what you were saying with, you know, what's going on. And I honestly don't know what's going to happen.
Sure.
I really don't. And I don't really care what people's political views are.
Yeah.
I know we're all heated on one way or another and stuff like that. And, you know, this is, you know, April of 25, and we just started with these new tariffs that are happening. And people are saying, well, the stock market's dropping and we might be going to a recession. I don't know. I thought the same thing would happen when our country was attacked in 2001. All right? But that took 7 years. And it wasn't until our gasoline prices, I know everybody keeps saying it was the bank's fault, but our gasoline prices, people don't remember, shot up to $4.50 a gallon in 2008. You had a whole bunch of people that were moving away from their work to buy the big dream, you know, the bigger home, and they were building these, you know, bigger houses far, far away. So we actually moved all the way out to Plainfield from Elmhurst out there. And I was driving an hour, you know, going to work, and then all of a sudden gas prices went from $2 to $4.50, and I'm spending, plus driving, you know, doing the home inspections and everything else, I'm spending almost, you know, $250 to $300 a week in gasoline. Well, that's $1,200 a month in fuel bills. And we start going back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, water, shelter. Well, shelter's our home, right? That's one of our basic needs. And you need food and water for your family, so you got to have a job, and you got to make money coming in. So you got to get to work in order to make the money come in. So now you need a car, you need gasoline, you need those things to happen. You're going to cut out the fun stuff. You're going to cut out the traveling. You're going to cut out going out to dinner and the entertainment and the movies. So those industries, they get laid off first, and they were investing in homes, and maybe they shouldn't have gotten the loans. I don't know, you know, but they were paying the mortgage until they lost their jobs. And then all of a sudden they couldn't rent them anymore, everything, they couldn't sell them anymore, all the foreclosures happened, everyone's house prices dropped. You know, I mean, it's going to recover no matter what happens. This is still the United States of America. You know, it's one of the greatest countries on earth. And yeah, it might go bad, but eventually everything, you know,
it'll circle back. So let me.
Sorry, I got off on a
that was
there.
good. So let's dive into a little bit more. So with the state, what exactly do you do with the state for inspectors?
The state association is the Illinois Association of Home Inspectors.
Illinois Association of Home Inspectors.
IAHI.
And you started it.
I did start it, I want to say about 6 years ago.
Wow.
You know, and that was because our licensing was sunsetting, and we didn't have a voice. Nobody was speaking for our organization. Nothing against the real estate agents, but they were the only ones with 13 lobbyists, you know, on the state, and they were able to influence laws, and we were silent. You know, so
how do you go about that process?
phone calls.
Phone calls.
Yeah.
What do you mean by phone calls? Like, are you calling, like, are you raising money? Like what is this process like? Because it's very, very interesting and intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's so. Let's give you the whole shebang here, starting at the beginning. I got a bug up my butt. All right, so you know, there's always. Do you know what PAS stands for? All right, it's part of marketing thing, and it stands for pain, agitate, and solution. All right.
Okay.
So anger is the number one motivator for a human being, and most people make purchases based on emotions. We all know that. I hope we all know that if you're in business. But pain is a very strong emotion for people. Anger is a very strong emotion. So most people, like for example, when they're searching for a home inspector, why? Why aren't they using the referral from the real estate agent? Maybe they had a bad experience with that. Maybe somebody did a bad job. They thought they weren't good, whatever. So my pain point was our reputation was going down and nobody was listening, and it was too easy for people to get a license and come in here. So that was my motivation, right? And I was able to, and I wasn't alone. So that's what I used to get support from everybody else. One common pain point.
So are you calling other inspectors like, hey, I'm thinking about starting this. We need to band together.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. So I purchased a list from the state of Illinois. You were able to buy the licensee list down. You can't do that anymore. So I was able to purchase the entire list. I searched people online, and then it was like over 2,000 people. So yeah, I'm making a phone call, checking them off, sending them texts, sending them emails. And I ended up getting 60% of our population to join. All right.
So just over 1,000 people.
Just over 1,000 people to come and join us. And that I couldn't get them to really donate a lot of money, so I just got them to put it in there for free. All right. And
what do you mean put it in there? Like just put their name down?
Put their name in there, sign up, get the newsletters, starting the communication, get a Facebook group going.
Oh, damn.
You know,
okay, I see what you're doing here.
You know, communication's always going to be the number one thing. Go back to military stuff. All right. If you can't communicate, you can't play.
Are you military?
I'm not.
Okay.
All right. But in the fire service, everybody that I worked with
Similar, yeah.
was in the military.
Yeah.
So they brought a whole bunch of those stuff into the fire service. It was mostly Navy.
Sure.
You know, guys that came in there. So I learned a lot of the tactics, logic, emotions, everything else, you know, being in the fire service and management and so forth. But going back to this, you know, the common pain point was it's just too easy to get a license for a home inspector, you know. And I try to explain to people that are entering our business, they go, well, what do you mean? I go, well, your client expects you to be the electrician, the roofer, the plumber,
Sure.
the HVAC guy, the concrete, you know, and all this stuff. But if you think about it, you want to be here in Chicago, you know, it's 5 years of schooling and on-the-job training to be a licensed electrician. State of Illinois licenses plumbers. That's another 5 years of schooling and on-the-job training. HVAC, even though they're not state licensed.
So do you start as an apprentice
4
and then you have a 5-year? How does it work?
You're talking about the electricians?
Yeah, like electrician, plumber.
Yeah, they go through the schooling and then they have to work with somebody else and they still go to school for 1 day a week. You know, that's part of their job.
Like trade school, yeah?
Until they end up getting their full journeyman license where it comes into. And there's a lot of tests and experience and knowledge that comes into these things. You know.
So do you think that's too difficult? Or too...
To be an electrician?
Yeah, like 5 years?
No, I don't.
Interesting. That seems like a very long time.
But they're able to work and make money while they're doing that.
Okay.
And that's one of the benefits of the union. I'm very pro-union when it comes to stuff like that, because they make sure that they do all the training and they make sure everybody's knowledgeable so that they can have pride in the work that the union members are doing.
Sure.
All right. I mean, I could hang out a shingle tomorrow and say I'm an electrician, and I could switch out some outlets, and you know, I've put on our own solar system in our house. I've done a lot of stuff like that.
I've shocked myself a couple of times.
Yeah. Well,
Flipping
at least you
property.
didn't electrocute yourself. So
No, I
that's a
definitely
good thing.
did.
Yeah.
I just lived to tell the story. It wasn't that bad, but I definitely electrocuted myself.
Well, that's the definition of electrocuted is you died.
Oh.
So you did not.
Okay.
Yeah, you shocked
No
yourself.
electrocution. Shocked.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so, which is, it's more tongue-in-cheek and stuff like that, but people do die from this stuff. It's legitimate, you know. And we need power when it comes with it, and electricians are expensive. Plumbers are expensive. You know, we're at the point right now where, you know, we got plumbers quoting $5,500 to switch out a water heater. You know, and I'm like, a water heater is like $700 to $1,000. You know, and you're going to tell me
$5,000 in labor.
right? You know, and it's just crazy. And then we're getting it to the point where they're trying to sell my clients stuff that they don't need.
Sales is sales.
Yeah, it's
Slimy sales.
ethics.
Yeah, slimy sales. I think too.
That guy was going to beat me up, though. I killed his deal. So
Oh, really?
That's a whole nother story.
Do you know Cody Sanchez by chance on
do
Instagram or
not.
social media? She's like the small business lady, but she's always talking about how there's a really big need for electricians, plumbers, the trades. Because a lot of, like, we glamorize, like, white collar, like, non-manual labor work for some reason in America. Like, that's kind of everybody's goal and whatever. But there's a lot of money to be made in the trades, especially if you run it right. Like, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and in the future, it's going to become even more opportunistic, which is interesting.
I would agree. Yeah, I would definitely agree. And it goes down to the supply and demand. You know, and the education and what you know how to do. But it's just really difficult for somebody to get those licenses.
Interesting. And you were saying your main pain point was it's too easy for inspectors. Okay, so you reached out.
Well, no, let me ask you, what do you think it takes to get a license for a home inspector?
Probably a state exam, and that's it.
No, you do have to go through some schooling.
Okay.
But it's 60 hours. 60 hours of YouTube watching videos, and you get 70% on a multiple choice test. Think about that.
Sure.
And if you get...
Same for realtor, same for insurance, same for loan officer. It's all the same rigmarole.
It is. And maybe I'm being a little too dramatic. I don't know. But somebody is spending 30 years of their life to pay off a mortgage on a house that they want to have. So and if you buy a house that is in bad shape or whatever, and needs a lot of money to be done to this thing, that could significantly harm a family, for years.
Sure.
Not just, I'm out, 2,000, and 2,000 might be a lot of money to somebody. 200,000 might not be a lot of money to somebody.
I think the most interesting piece of an inspector's, and this is coming from a non-inspector, so you're going to have some opinions, but like the big structural situations, right? Like there's always going to be these little things, but if somebody buys a property and it needs like a new foundation or something, the bigger issue, in my opinion, is the resale of that property, right? Like you can live with a foundation that's cracked and needs replacing, like the house. As long as the house isn't going to fall down, you're fine. But when you go to resell that is when it becomes a problem. So you kind of end up trapped in the property. And then it's like a very sticky situation because then you're trying to hide stuff that you already know about. You get into like disclosure law, all that crazy stuff. And I know a lot of investors do it. I know a lot of people get around it, do it. But just very interesting. And I would think that there's a lot of liability that comes on top of inspectors. Very, very interesting there. I don't know.
Let's hit the liability part first.
Okay.
Because this is important. Inspectors have no liability.
Interesting.
All right? Yeah, there's 3 case laws in Illinois, and all 3 of them have protected the actual home inspector, all right, which is different in Wisconsin.
Because the state's got $75 million.
Well, the judges all had the same reaction, and case law means that somebody got sued, it was appealed, and it was upheld in appellate court, all right? So what's happened was, like let's just put myself in one of the examples. I do an inspection, and I didn't notice that the water was coming in and mold was growing and people got sick, all right? And whatever reason, maybe there was no signs, whatever it was, I just didn't notice it. Maybe it was obvious and I didn't notice it, all right? So somebody sued, they want to get all this money from me, to protect them and stuff like that. And in our agreements, and every home inspector has to have an agreement, it's either the fee paid or double the fee paid. That's it. That comes in there. And it's whatever's written in that agreement is the only protection the home buyer has. A lot of home inspectors, well, I have errors and omissions insurance. I said, so do I, but that's
not part of the.
Go ahead.
That's not part of the, that's not going to pay out if the issue is there because in your contract it only says fee or double the fee. Is that what you're talking about?
That's not where I was going, but the errors and omissions insurance is not there for my client. And just like your errors and omissions insurance isn't there for your clients.
Correct.
It's there for you.
Correct.
It's there for me.
Correct.
All right. What it is basically a retainer fee where I'm paying a group of attorneys that if I get sued, somebody's going to protect me in court, and if they lose in doing that, then they end up paying the fee. But the reason why they do it and the reason why it's not outrageously expensive for us is because there's really no liability because of the agreements that we have everybody sign. We hold back that liability. And the judges have ruled, he goes, well, you as a home buyer, first of all, the agreements, this is Illinois, it's a very contract-oriented state, and that agreement's going to hold up in court. That's number one. Number two is the freedom of choice. As a home buyer, you can hire a structural engineer, an electrician, a plumber, a roofer, and everything else, but you choose to go ahead and get a discounted rate and hire one individual who's clear on that they're not an expert in all of those avenues, so because of which he's
And that's why you guys always recommend in your reports, we suggest a structural engineer, we suggest an electrician, we suggest a plumber, et cetera, right?
Now you're just trying to aggravate me because that's another pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, hit me. I'm naive. I don't know it like you know it, so I'm approaching it like a investor.
100%
You know what
right,
I mean?
though. You're right, and that drives me nuts that we do that. It's like all we're doing, and I tell my clients this all the time. One of the things I like to do to keep myself involved, because I don't go out in the field and do inspections anymore. I do mostly Zoom calls with our clients, and they go, well, so and so, let's say Dave, one of our inspectors, because Dave said that I should get a structural engineer. I said, okay. This is us being cowards.
Okay.
All right. This is exactly what this is. This is me talking to my clients right now. I said, the only time I like to refer off a structural engineer for a foundation problem like this is if I think everything's okay, but I don't have the guts to say it's okay. All right. Something's a little off here. I don't know what it is, and I kind of want to push this off on someone else. But if you hire a structural engineer, you're looking at $600 to $1,800.
Very expensive, yeah.
They're not cheap.
Yeah.
Right. And this sounds like me being a smart ass, and I swear I'm not, But the truth is, if the foundation is still moving, it's a problem, all right? If it's no longer moving, it's not a problem. We have so many properties around here that are over 100 years old. I live in a house that's 130 years old.
Yeah.
We gutted the house. We put another roof on, made it slightly bigger. We kept the foundation in the first floor and everything else, so I got 2x8 floor joist and, brick foundations and brick footings, and my floors are wonky, my walls are wonky. I don't care. I didn't straighten them out.
Yeah.
I like that, and now it's my choice to keep it like that. So, it moved, but the question is, did it move 100 years ago or 100 days ago? And nobody, no structural engineer, not me, not anybody, can tell you that, or if it's still moving.
I also think with structural engineers, right, they're in it. There's a sales aspect to everything. Like you said, slimy sales. Contractors want things to be wrong. Structural engineers want things to be wrong. Electricians, plumbers, they all want things to be wrong because that's how they get paid. So it's always like ethics does play a big thing, and I think that it's a very gray area.
And we are a prejudicial society. Even how you're talking right now is very prejudicial.
For sure.
All right? We lump all the electricians and everybody else. Humans
of course.
Are different.
Of course. There's good, there's bad.
There is.
So I have a property in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm living in Miami at the time. Made the mistake of telling the contractor that I lived in Miami. He's like, there's like a 2-foot hole in the roof and water's like dripping down to the kitchen. I'm like, okay. So my mom was driving through, she lives in Wisconsin, so she was driving through Milwaukee the next 2 days. So I was like, well, like, Mom, go check this out. Like, let me know. This guy's saying some crazy stuff. Nothing. Not a single thing wrong with the property. Not one thing. Yeah. And this guy's just trying to scam me because he knows that I'm out. And I made an Instagram story about it. A bunch of people reached out. It was actually really funny. But, like, that's so crazy. That is so crazy. So your story, you almost got beat up by a plumber.
Yeah, I thought he was going to deck me and stuff. So, single mother of 4, African-American lady, and she owned her own business. Very smart, right? She bought a house in Glenview. Glenview's lily white. And, she shared with me after all this stuff was done that she just wasn't welcomed in the neighborhood. She's trying to be, her kids are shunned and things like that, and it's sad that stuff like that actually still happens. and they were kind. So I get a phone call from her. I'm out of town. This is on a Friday, and I'm away at a convention, right? And it starts off with, I had a garage door guy come over to reprogram the remotes, and he said he can't reprogram these things because it was a unique garage door and everything. You have to go buy a whole new garage door opener. So she bought the universal. She hired a garage door guy for $100 to program for her because she didn't know how to do it. He comes over, says you can't do it. You need a new garage door opener, and they're on sale this week for $1,500. And I'll go ahead and
$1,500 garage door opener?
Yeah, exactly.
That thing is a spaceship.
It was whatever. It was just trying to take advantage of a woman. That's all. And so she's mad. She's swearing at me, and I'm trying to keep my cool because I don't do well with that. And she's telling me my guy is an idiot for not telling him. I said, listen, I'm out of town. I can be there on Monday. I'll get him programmed. If I can't get him programmed, I don't want any upset clients. We'll figure out what to do. We'll make it right. And I knew it wasn't going to be a new garage door.
Yeah,
it's just
crazy.
We just need to program them. So I'm driving there Monday. While I'm going there, I'm getting another phone call, and again, she's angry, with me because now her water heater's not working. We had a storm come through while I was out of town, and the power went out. When the power came back on, her water heater wasn't working anymore. It's a power vented water heater, so there's a fan on top of it. It needs power, it needs electricity as well as the gas. I'm like, please, just take a deep breath. I'm 10 minutes away. Let me get there and figure things out. We'll go from there. The plumber was still there. I didn't introduce myself. I just, what's going on? So he gives me the whole song and dance. The condensate line wasn't installed, and now the inducer fan is shorted out from getting wet and everything else, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this malarkey. It's all a bunch of BS. And so I go, you mind if I look at it? So I go, so here's plugged. I foul the plug. It's plugged into a GFI outlet. I unplug it, hit the reset button, plug it back in. Everything is firing right up. Yeah, there was no condensate laying on it, but you're able to install a vented water heater, a direct vent water heater if it's close enough to the wall, even with a downward pitch. There is right there in the instruction manual. So nothing was wrong with that. And he wanted to charge her $5,500 for a new water heater. And then he comes back after I did it. I go, oh, it was just a GFI. And he goes, well, I knew the GFI was tripped. And now I'm upset, right? You knew the GFI was upset. It's a 4-year-old house. So it's a 4-year-old water heater.
Yeah.
Why didn't you reset it? He goes, I'm not allowed to. I'm like, you're allowed to sell her a $5,500 water heater, a single mother of 4, but you can't push a reset button on this thing. Well, how the hell are you going to get the new water heater going? Then he starts walking towards me, and I'm like, okay, now I'm shaking. I'm very upset. Whatever. And then everybody just finally tossed him out of the house for trying to take advantage of it. And then went upstairs. It took me more time to get those damn remotes out of the boxes than it did with the program.
It's crazy.
You lift the door, learn, button, door.
Sham and scam and sales.
They exist.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? The more you know. But even with investors, excuse me, we've had, I had houses that were going through the flips, and we had one that had a lead water service coming in, and they busted open the concrete underneath there. They cut the lead water line down below the concrete, and then they put a stubby in a copper pipe, and then they put the concrete back, so it looks like it's a copper pipe coming out of there. Well, if somebody doesn't know the difference between soft temper and hard temper copper, you would think that you actually do have a copper water line coming in there, where you don't. You just have a stub. And not only that, but because the lead water line got cut, now they had high lead water levels coming in there. That was a thing that happened here in Chicago under Mayor Lightfoot. She was trying to put water meters in all the houses that don't have water meters, so get rid of the flat rate bills, but they had to cut the lead water lines to do that. And so all of a sudden those houses started getting high lead water levels. That program got stopped immediately. You can't put people at risk with that stuff. But
that's crazy.
It is. So stuff like that actually happens. And if you don't have somebody who's aware of those things and on the ball and able to understand those things, and you can't learn that in 60 hours. That was my beef with going in here, the pain point that I mentioned earlier. So I wanted to make it harder for people to get a license. I wanted to raise the score for people to get a license. And the only thing I was able to do was get one more field event and turn that field event into an actual test. But even that, it's not being
Not enough.
enforced. It's nowhere near enough. But our problem with our profession is there's not enough work either. All right. So like when you're dealing with the electricians and the plumbers, they can work. Like if you're going to come and work for me, and you can come on board, and I could pay you while you're learning. All right. Whereas, because home inspectors, and again, this is Charlie's belief, we've given all of our leverage, all of our power away to the real estate agents, right? Because, we want to get those referrals. It's easy income if all the real estate agents refer only my business that comes in there. But guess what? Every other home inspector is doing the same thing. And if they can't come across and explain their value proposition, now the only difference is going to be price. And same thing, I think, in the insurance business. If everybody has to provide the same product and it's pretty much going to be the same rate, well, now it's a commodity.
It's price. Yeah.
All right. So when you're dealing with your unique business here, you're going to have to sit there and put it in writing, and it's not an easy thing to do, being self-assessing like that. But you need to find out, what are you doing that makes you special? Why should somebody want to build a relationship with you? All right. And in my business, I have to do the same thing. But I just choose to do it with the home buyer instead of the real estate agent. I found out that, sometimes they want to save their clients money, so they want to keep getting the price down. I've had people tell me
that's how I approach inspections. Like, load me up so I can just rip them down.
And I've had other agents, I compete with people, they refuse to document more than 15 things in a home inspection report. We average 70.
Yeah.
All right? And if you're a real estate agent listening right now, you're probably not going to like me. That's okay. All right? I'm not a bad person.
Yeah.
We just did a focus group on our past clients. And the biggest thing that I got from that was, I just want to know. This is what my clients were saying. I want to be able to make my own decision. I just want to be educated enough so I can make an intelligent decision.
Sure.
I'm talking too much.
So the state. So let's go back into the state situation. So you put in a field event. It's not being taken seriously by the state, enforced by the state.
Not really. No.
Okay. So what happens next? Like you put in that field event. You're running this group. You said you're lobbying. What does lobbying entail? Like, let's dive into that compared to like the 15 lobbying realtor people that you have. Like, I'm so interested in this space.
Okay.
Very, very interested.
So basically, in order to be a registered lobbyist in the state of Illinois, there's a fee. There's, a short class, no test. And mostly it's all registration. So everybody who you're working for, who you're getting paid for, they all have to be there. All right. So I'm exclusive just to our state association, all right? In fact, I don't think I renewed it this time around because we did hire a full-time lobbyist to work for
all
us.
the people in your group are paying a little bit of money to this lobbyist.
Well, they're paying to the association, and the association pays the lobbyist.
Yeah, okay.
All right? And, so Bridget, she was our lobbyist. She's now retired, and we'll probably be finding another one, but I'm going to wait another year or two before we go ahead and do that because we're in between the cycles, and I just need some time off.
Sure.
All right? But the lobbying gives you the right to talk to the politicians, so the representatives, the senators, the governors, their staff, everything else that comes with it. You can also talk to the state of Illinois, and they're far open, and I'm talking about the staff of the state of Illinois. All right, so like the staff of the IDEA PR. And anybody really can talk to them, but when you're...
Not seriously.
Right. When you're a lobbyist and you're in there, then that's your job, and, they're going to let you talk more. But there's more rules and everything else that you have to follow with those communications. And anybody who is getting involved in this, I'll give you a secret phrase to listen for all the time. We'll take that under advisement. And I always crack up every time because they've only
sure you
said
will.
They've said it to me twice. And yeah, I get a little passionate, I guess. But whenever you're arguing with them and you're not getting anywhere and they want you to shut up, we'll take it under advisement. So I remember the first time I'm like, oh no, I know what that means. That means shut up. I don't want to hear anymore. Fine, and I did.
Does it get heated in there, or like is it a more kosher?
They're very professional.
Because
to me,
it would seem like a court case. Like, you know how you watch like attorneys present in front of a judge and there's a jury and all that stuff. Is it similar to that, like that jargon, that vocabulary, that demeanor, or?
It is.
Yeah.
It is a lot like that. But then, I am not the most perfect human being on the world. I get passionate.
Sure.
And I get emotional. Yeah. And I don't do a very good job at controlling that. And when that happens, they will shut me down. Now the attorneys, and like Patrick, he's another attorney that's on our radio show with us. He's amazing when it comes to keeping us cool, but that's part of the education that they go through.
Yeah, law school, yeah.
And that goes back into the military. The human brain, a lot of people don't know this, but the human brain cannot physically function both in an emotional and a logical state at the same time, all right? So and that's part of why we do all that training that we do. They always say you want to keep training until you get it right. That's not true. You want to keep training so you don't get it wrong, all right? And you want to do it so it's normal and it's routine, so it's not emotional, it's not frightening. There's enough fear and, emotions that come out to a lot of stuff that we do, and that just gets in the way. You don't think logically when it comes to that stuff. So I try to focus on that, but I'm weak. That is a weakness of mine. But going back to the lobbying stuff, we have to figure out what we want, and the more aggressive you become in doing the actions, and I mean doing the actions without them, the more that they want to communicate with you. So what I mean by that, we wrote our own law, all right? We sent it to the Legislative Review Committee, and we got it, we did find a senator, we found a representative, and they were going to propose our bill for us. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The IDFPR goes, oh, we don't want to be competing. The whole goal, and this goes back to, when I was involved with our union on the fire department, anytime you get into a negotiation with somebody, the entire goal is to come to an agreement, all right? Both sides to agree with one thing. And that's what they want as well. They want industry to agree, but sometimes we don't agree. But the goal is to get to an agreement, and we don't want the politicians arguing. If we can come in on both sides and say we're in agreement, just like going to court, as you mentioned, if you get the defense and the prosecution, okay, we come to an agreement, we plead or whatever bargain.
So at this point, you write your own law, like your own.
We rewrote the entire thing.
The entire what? I'm sorry.
The entire Illinois Home Inspector Licensing Act.
Okay, so you wrote that, and you take it and you present it to a senator.
Yeah.
And the senator chooses to represent because he thinks it's a good idea to push it through?
Yeah.
And make it law?
Well, yeah.
Okay. So then now you have the IDFPR sees that, and they're like, well, wait, we want to work with you instead of against you. We see you as a threat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Threat's a tough word, but yeah, they don't. If these things go into where the politicians are debating and they're doing the he said, she said stuff like that, nobody wins. All right? And everything gets cut. They don't want to deal with it. They got enough stuff that they have to argue about already in making these things law and stuff like that. So when it comes to trade laws, they want the staff of the state to work with the industry, which is us, to come up with an agreement to make everybody happy. All right? Their job, they being the state of Illinois, is to protect the residents of Illinois so that they don't get harmed. So we need to leave a way for the state to be able to shut down a bad home inspector, a bad home inspection company. So there has to be the disciplinary stuff in there, rightfully so. All right, we've had people do inspections and collect money and never did the work and whatever, work under fake names, and there's bad people that got licenses.
Sure.
We need to be able to shut them down. But for us, our whole thing is we want to protect our reputation. So same thing. I want to get rid of the bad guys, but I also want to make sure that our guys that are bad, that don't know they're bad, learn that they're bad so they can get better. And that's one of our weaknesses. So if we could slow the bad people from coming in, I figure that'd be happier. So
Sure.
yeah, the lobbying there, Bridget was our main lobbyist. She is an attorney. That's her full-time gig. So writing laws, doing all that stuff, that was her thing.
Got it.
And she was good at it.
So what happens next after the IDFPR says, like, hey, we want to work with you?
Then it goes to, well, there's two things. There's the law, and then there's the rules. All right, do you know the difference between those? Okay. The act. An act is a law. An act has to go through the representatives, it has to go through the Senate, and then it has to be signed by the governor in order for it to become a state law. Rules is done through the Joint Commission of JCAR, Joint Commission of Administrative Rules. Joint Commission of Administrative Rules is a total of, I want to say 12, all right? 12 people. It's perfectly balanced. So there's going to be 6 senators, 6 senators, 6 representatives. There's going to be 6 Republicans and 6 Democrats on there. So nobody has majority of that whole thing, all right? And they do that on purpose, to, again, get everybody to come to an agreement, all right? So and they don't need a signature in changing the rule portion of a law. They don't need a signature of the governor to do that. That Joint Commission of Administrative Rules has the power to change those.
Is this something that you went to watch? Like you went to watch this discussion? It was behind closed doors?
Ooh, nothing is behind closed doors.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go to the state of Illinois and watch it. This was all done during COVID times, though, so we were able to do everything on Zoom. And yes, we got involved when it was us. I don't want to watch everybody else.
Yeah.
And I forgot the name of the forum, but they put it out every week. What happens in JCAR, that gets posted and it's online every single week. So you know what, and they do have to vote twice on things, so you know it's coming, if you watch for it. And we watch for it.
Sure.
So it's, knowing your laws, advocating for your laws, speaking to the staff of the state of Illinois, getting your voices heard. It might not change anything, but if you don't speak, you don't even have that chance
Sure.
to get anything changed.
Sure.
Right?
So you got everything changed, and here you are. Is that that was like what, a year or two ago?
Well, that started 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay.
5 years ago, and then last year, 24 is when everything was done. And so and it's in 5 years it's going to sunset. And we're going to go through the whole thing again. So,
Wait,
but that's
what do you mean by that? Like you're going to have to go through the whole process again, or?
Well, I shouldn't say every law, but our law, most licensing laws, have a sunset date on there, which means that if this law is not renewed, then this law is null and void after this date. Right? Most of them were 10 years that they went along with, but this latest administration only wanted a 5-year sunset law. So when we got licensed in 24 was that renewal period license, then the next one is going to be 29 or 28 because it goes on even numbered years. But
Sure.
that's when the changes are going to be made again. And somebody has to rewrite it. It has to go through the House, the Senate, the governor, all that stuff again. So, a lot of it will stay the same, maybe. And then if somebody wants some changes, they're going to do that. So we're going to get our committees together. We're going to talk about what it is that we don't like. Those that want to be involved will speak up. And then we vote on what we're going to do and move forward. We put our legislative team together, get our lobbyists involved, and then we go through the whole routine again.
That's interesting. Are you excited to do that?
No.
No? Not a good process.
Well,
but it's for the outcome. Like, what's the purpose for you of, you kind of said it. It was increasing the
our reputation.
standard reputation. Okay.
Yeah. And
very
this is, I believe in what I do. I've been doing this for a long time.
Sure.
I have the 31st license ever issued in the state of Illinois.
That's crazy.
All right. The 30 people that were before me, there's only 2 that are still in business today. You know, the rest of them are all retired and stuff. And that was back in 2001, 2002.
Sure.
You know, when this stuff happened. So, and this is a career.
That's awesome.
You know, and I don't know, I believe in it. I think that what we do is good, and it's worth volunteering and donating my time for it, and it takes a lot of time.
Do you get the appreciation from the other inspectors, or what's the status of them?
Oh, yeah. You know, sometimes I get a lot of thank yous, pats on the back, and everything else. And otherwise, I feel like I'm that little mole that pops up in the whack-a-mole machine. And there's a whole bunch of, yeah. There's a lot of people with a lot of mallets that are willing to bop me in the head.
Interesting.
And stuff like that.
So some
Nobody
good, some
agrees.
bad, yeah.
Of course, nobody's going to agree. You can never get everybody to agree on 100%. And a lot of people don't want to be told what to do.
Sure.
You know, so when we start advocating for, like, we never had to have insurance before. All right, how about that one?
There you go.
You know, home inspectors for over 20 years were not required to have any insurance whatsoever.
Okay.
And even now, you know, this last go around, the state of Illinois wanted us to have errors and omissions and general liability insurance. And I'm like, well, general liability insurance, I'm going to agree with. I really am. All right. And my rationale is that general liability insurance is designed in case I damage somebody's house. That person who hired me doesn't own that house. The person who owns the house didn't hire me. They don't get that freedom of choice to go ahead for me to come in there. If I damage something in their home, there should be some sort of protection for that.
Sure.
There really should.
Okay.
You know, so and the amount of insurance is ridiculously low. It's $100,000 a year with a 1-year tail coverage. You know, and I don't know what you guys charge, but it's probably about $400 to $600. You know, that comes in there. So a year. So it's not a lot. Errors and omission insurance, that goes by how much volume you do. All right. So for us, you know, we have $2 million coverage, and yeah, and I know our general liability is included in that amount as well. We've never used it, you know, but I've had people threaten lawsuits with it, and so I send it to them, and they put the kibosh on those things right away. I mean, we really go out of our way for our clients, you know.
Sure.
But in fact, this was an insurance deal that caused my one and only claim in 37 years where they had to put the kibosh on this stuff. You know, we did an inspection. We told our clients the roof was about 3/4 of its life through there. You could see there was a little bit of error. You're grinning and nodding your head because, you know, apparently, you know, the underwriters look at Google Earth and they see that it was shaded, looked like there was granule loss on there, and they tell the client, you got 30 days to get a new roof or we're dropping you on the insurance. So my client didn't call me, all right? I had this happen last year, 4 clients, 3 called, 1 didn't. All right, this one didn't call, they got a roofer out there right away, and anything in construction, there's good, fast, and cheap, right? You don't get all 3, you get 2.
Yeah.
All right, so if you get rid of fast, and it's gotta be fast, now it's either gonna be good or cheap that's gotta go, all right? And in this situation, they got rid of cheap. So it was good and fast, and they ended up paying $32,000. And they wanted me to pay for that, you know, and I'm like, I'm not paying for that. We have it in our agreement. You know, we don't even know what insurance company you're going with, let alone what their rules are, and those rules change all the time, and they don't inform us.
And you don't know what insurance company they're going with?
Yeah, but the you know, they did that, so they wrote a letter of demand, and I had to submit that. I couldn't help my client anymore. You know, I had another one down in Hyde Park. This client did call me. It was a State Farm, you know, agent come in there, same thing, you know, looked at Google Earth, flat roof, TPO roof. You could clearly see the ponding was there, and then our guy didn't mention anything about the ponding in there. And, you know, so all of a sudden I get the phone call, insurance sees this, they want a new roof, and we're going crazy. I'm like, I call the guy up, he goes, it rained yesterday, you know, and there was no water on there. That's not ponding. It's, you know, we saw the signs, we talked about it, but it's not ponding. I said, we got proof of that? He says, yeah. He says, all right, let's go this. We get the weather, we come back in here. I go out there and take the pictures again. we sent it off to the State Farm underwriter, and they reneged. They said, okay, you don't have to get a new roof on based on the letter that we wrote. That's huge.
Every underwriter is different,
I get
right?
that.
That's the most frustrating thing. Is like there's a systematic process that they have to follow, but each opinion is different. Every human's different, whether it be loans, insurance, whatever the case is. So you never know, like if you're going to get a good underwriter, one that wants to work with you, one that wants to go against you, where they're at in like the corporate situation. Like it's a big unknown.
Yeah, and I know down in Florida they got a lot of problems when it comes to roofs and insurances. And here there's a lot of things that are going on, with hail damage and storm damage that comes with it. And I get it. You're in business as an insurance company to make money. I get it. And you're not in business to pay out on every single thing all the time. And if you could go ahead and make people be proactive on protecting their property, then you save everybody money. Because it's not just a homeowner, it's also all the other people that want to buy in there, because we're all paying for those things.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that. So.
It's very expensive. Yeah, I don't know.
Now I'm trying to share that with my clients, just so call me. Call me. If it's something that we could prove that it doesn't require to be replaced and they accept it, then that's great.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I think a lot of people get so worked up, like you said, it's like
you panic.
Just anger straight to emotional. But like people like yourself or investors, people that have been through the real estate space over and over and over again, we're used to this and we know how to solve those problems very easily. So all it takes is a phone call.
But you can't solve it if you're not involved.
Exactly.
And then once you write a letter of demand to somebody, I can't talk to them anymore. My insurance company won't let me.
Interesting.
The attorneys are there. They want to communicate. I have to communicate through them.
Sure.
If you don't do that and you just talk to me and you don't ask me for money, then I could do it. But once you put that letter of, we need $32,000 from you. Okay, I'm sorry.
Here you go.
I can't help
Served,
anymore.
yeah.
And I want to be helping. So
sure.
Yeah, there's a lot about our business, and I'm sorry I talk too much.
No, that's great. I appreciate it. I learned a lot from you, Charlie. Thank you so much for coming in. Yeah, we'll have to run it up again sometime in a couple months, maybe.
I'd like that.
Okay,
Yeah, I
awesome.
like that. We'll focus on another subject a little smaller and shorter.
Sure.